FM dial in Los Angeles and a weekly columnist for The Hill in Washington, D.C. To get my take on Donald Trump's imperial presidency, you can read my columns in The Hill at muckrack.com/Brad Bannon. Mondays on Deadline DC, I talk to the people and to the players in the politics and policies that drive our great nation forward, or at least keep it from going backwards under Trump 2.0. Today, we have a really good show for you. In the first half hour, our guest is Paul Lisnek, who is the anchor of the political show, the Political Report on WGN-TV in Chicago. And by the way, if you want to watch the Political Report, which is on every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, you can watch it at www.wgntv.com /live. In the second half hour, our guest will be Tara Devlin, who the host of the TARABUSTER podcast, who will talk about the No Kings protest and other vital issues. We're going to play this clip now, which shows Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
We also got a very special report filed by J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois.
This is J.B. Pritzker reporting from war-torn Chicago. As you can see, there's utter mayhem and chaos on the ground. It's quite disturbing. The Milwaukee Brewers have come in to attack our Chicago Cubs. We've seen people being forced to eat hot dogs with ketchup on them. And our deep dish pizza, well, has gone shallow. So it's a challenge to survive here in the city of Chicago, but there's no hellscape that I'd rather be in.
Well, thank you, Governor. And please know that you and the Cubs will be in our prayers.
That was Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who may run for president, on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, mocking the president's description of Chicago and other major American cities as war-torn. Our guest in this half hour is Paul Lisnek, who is a political and legal analyst for WGN-TV in Chicago. He is also the author of many books, the latest of which I think is Assumed Guilt. I thank Paul very much for joining us. I don't know where he gets the time to do this show and everything else he does, but fortunately we have him for this half hour. Welcome back to Deadline DC, Paul.
It has been a minute, Brad. It's good to be with you. Happy to talk about all things national in Illinois.
Okay, first of all, the president has described Chicago, Portland, Washington, D.C., and other major American cities as war zones. You report on Chicago for WGN TV and radio. Is it a war zone? It seems to me we're facing alternate realities here where the president describes these cities in military terms, and meanwhile millions of Chicagoans and Portlandians are living normal lives. Something's wrong here. What gives?
Well, and just to remind your viewers and listeners, my job on WGN, as you said, is as an analyst. I'm not a commentator, so I say that, meaning I'm not coming on here to speak the liberal or conservative view. I try and present both views. That's what I do on the air. So the answer to your question here is that, no, there's no evidence that this is a war zone. The toughest part of what is happening in what we call our Broadview area and a few others truly has been created and triggered by all of these ICE troops who are coming here, and for a short while the National Guard. That's put on hold for right now. But what's really interesting, I'm going to put the legal hat on for a moment, is that when you have courts, as they've done here in Illinois, and they look at the situation to decide in response to a motion or a request, can we get these troops out of here? in this area, the federal judges have said there's no insurrection going on here, there's no invasion going on here, and that's what it would take in order for the president to lawfully send, for example, National Guard troops here. ICE he can send, but not National Guard. It's interesting that in some other places where he's getting challenged, the court looks at it differently and says, well, this is about presidential power. And we're not to question really presidential power when it happens. We can look at it down the line. So in other places, of course, the troops have not been ordered out. The final update, not final, but the latest update here out of the Chicago area is the Trump administration has brought this to the U.S. Supreme Court saying, look, allow me to send these National Guard troops back there. And of course, what's interesting about that is that the Supreme Court, I know we're going to talk about them specifically a little bit later, but they have not found very many reasons to keep this president, maybe others in the future, from essentially exercising their authority however they choose to. So that's Trump's effort, is to go up to the Supreme Court and see whether they will assist him out and say, yes, these troops can be there regardless of what the judges closer to the ground are saying.
Okay, well, let me, about a month ago, there was graphic news footage of the scene in Chicago, which many Americans felt very troubling. ICE rappelled from helicopters onto a high-rise apartment building. They detained several residents of that apartment building, and also there was footage, news footage, which I'm sure was on WGN, of little kids being led away in cuffs. And what was that scene like?
It's pretty shocking, I think, for the people who lived here. And you're right; it was sort of a middle of the night effort where just hundreds of these ICE and I believe at that time National Guard troops, as you said, rappelled down the building and was like watching a movie. Trump had put up a meme or something like that several weeks ago, basically saying, saying apocalypse now here in Chicago, right? Shipocalypse, he said, shipocalypse now. Those are the kind of scenes that presented that image. But you're right, people, elderly people, little kids were zip tied with their hands behind their back. And, the argument from ICE and National Guard was, well, we got to zip tie the kids. It's for their own safety. But, you have to take a step back. This was not a hostage situation. There was nothing going on here, I think, that would have prevented that activity being conducted with some knocks on the front door in the early morning or during the daytime. I'm not quite sure, other than the visual appearance of it all, why the decision was made to do what they were doing. Now, if there were some, indication that the government had that nobody else knew about or has seen since, requiring this immediate kind of action, okay, maybe there was, but I haven't seen it. So I will say here it was greatly shocking. And now what you do see on the news every day is you are seeing protests going on and groups, near the ICE facility, where one judge also ordered a fence that had been built to be taken down. It was built by the federal government, and the mayor of Broadview, which is where that area is, said, I don't want it here. And ultimately, I said on the air, she's going to win that one. She did. And that fence has been taken down. We'll see what challenges there are to that. So the bottom line to it is, sure, there's crime in Chicago. Mayor wouldn't object to that. Mayor says, I've got some ways we can continue to address crime. Our rates are down. But, yes, it can be scary to walk around certain neighborhoods. But this invasion of, all these, gangs and whatever that he's talking about, Tri-Agua and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't think most people would say we've seen them or that there's much of it here. There may be a little bit, but not requiring what we're seeing.
Now, have there been any repercussions from that raid? It seemed to me it was, from my viewing, pretty horrifying, but have there been any political or legal repercussions from that raid?
Well, I mean, what you're seeing are the repercussions, and you say it, legal repercussions. It's just efforts in court. It just highlights and triggers the tension a little bit more. If they were doing what they were doing in a different way, I don't know that you'd have all the protesters going out the way they're going. But obviously, the Chicagoland area feels the pressure and the tension of what's going on, not knowing what is next. Now, again, a judge here in the Cook County area, a federal judge, who actually was President Biden's appointee to become the U.S. attorney here, but the Senate blocked it. He made her a judge, and so Judge April Perry. And so she, after a 2-day deliberation, I actually thought she was going to go the other way because she didn't rule immediately. basically issued a temporary restraining order, which can be renewed. That's coming up relatively soon, and we'll see where it goes. But it does
Paul,
have
as the anchor of your own show, I'll know you appreciate this, but we got to take a
time for
quick break. For our radio listeners, we'll be right back with Paul Lisnek from WGN-TV in Chicago.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes? Their age?
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is Paul Lisnek, the political and legal analyst for WGN-TV in Chicago. Paul, while we're on the subject, let me ask you this. The Supreme Court ruled, I guess, a month or two ago, and I'm asking you to put your legal hat back on here. The Supreme Court ruled about a month ago, maybe longer than that, that immigrations and customs enforcement essentially have the power to detain people who they think might be illegal immigrants. Did I get that ruling correct?
No, you did. And in fact, let me just expand on it a little bit. The Supreme Court, a conservative majority, of course, basically said it is okay if ICE wants to stop somebody because of their skin color, because they speak Spanish, because they are having a low-paying job. And I have to say, I've been a lawyer for 40 years. It's stunning. That kind of decision is stunning. I mean, whether you don't believe in DEI or whatever your views are, fine. Have your views and I'll respect them. But the bottom line to it is for the highest court in this land to basically say, sure, you can stop somebody because of the way they look or the language they use or the job they hold. It just goes against everything about civil rights that I think we've seen in this country. Now, again, Trump supporters and Republicans will say, well, that's oftentimes how you know what's. It basically goes against the protections of the U.S. Constitution. So, yeah, and in many of those cases, we learn that they're pulling over, they're stopping, they're detaining U.S. citizens. And of course, we're getting the anecdotal stories of people who, say, look, here's my passport, here's my driver's license, I'm a U.S. citizen. And ICE is saying, we're not buying that, we're not taking it. So that makes it a very frightening experience for those who look or sound like they might be of non-American descent.
Well, my legal expertise is confined to one course in constitutional law at Syracuse University. But I remember the professor who always said the Constitution is whatever the court thinks it is. And in this case, it just seems so blatantly unconstitutional. But if the justices think that sort of behavior is justified constitutionally, I guess we're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, that's what I should have said as my last line. My last line to your last question should have been, but that's what the court says is constitutional, and therefore it is. And that's just right. It is. The law says one thing, but we wait until the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately tells us what the way they determine it to mean. So they determine all sorts of things, and you look through history. There's times that separate but equal were okay, that separate but equal was not okay, then having abortions was okay, then not then restricting abortions was okay to do. So yeah, the Supreme Court, which has ruled that going by somebody's looks or language or whatever is sufficient, that's the law until it gets changed.
Okay, Paul, we have to take another quick break here to bring back our radio listeners. Our guest this is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is Paul Lisnek, who is the political and legal analyst for WGN-TV in Chicago. We'll be back right after this quick message. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon, and welcome back to our radio listeners. I want to remind our radio listeners, if you want to see Deadline DC as well as listen to it, you can watch us at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, at facebook.com//Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, and at YouTube at youtube.com/@deadline DC. Our guest in this half hour is Paul Lisnek, the legal and political analyst for WGN-TV in Chicago, and the host of the Political Report, which you can view every Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Time online at WGN. Paul, let's switch to a different subject. First of all, there was a large No Kings March in Chicago Saturday, along with marches in other cities across the country. What was the march like?
Well, we had reporters covering it. So not as a reporter, I did not attend. Wouldn't be permitted to attend anyway. Being in the journalism world, you don't do that. You don't go to public events like that unless you're reporting on them. But that being said, just watch the coverage like so many people. Reports of 7 million people all over the country and in other countries as well. The president coming out today by saying they were, very small crowds and basically attacking everybody that was there. He put out an interesting meme over the weekend as well, which showed him in an airplane and essentially dropping waste on these crowds and going after
Yeah,
it. So, again, I always like to ask the
not very
question.
presidential.
Well, again, if Obama, Biden pick a president who had done the same thing, everybody would be losing their minds over it. We'd be back in impeachment proceedings. But President Trump has just given a lot of leeway with almost anything he chooses to do. The question is, what was the point of the march? And I think it's a really good question to ask. The hope of the people who marched would be to say, well, hopefully we're sending the president a message, which is that people are not happy with his policies and he needs to change them. That might work with some people. My take as an analyst is I don't think it matters at all. Again, the president already put down the marches by saying very small crowds of lunatics. So what exactly do we expect him to take out of that? To say, okay, I think I'll make some modifications. The real questions for the marchers and the 7 million people who march would be to say, do you plan to vote in 2026? I mean, if you're going to make a difference and you're expecting there to be change, the answer's with you all. It ain't what's going to be with President Trump. He's going to do what he does. So if people who marched out there are thinking we need to have a change, we need, the Democrats, that is to say, have to get the House back for themselves in 2026, they better be voting. They better be working there. Probably time better spent than holding up posters, walking around the streets.
Yeah, of course, that raises a question you mentioned. What's next? The march was apparently a success. Millions of people across America marched, but somehow you have to channel that energy to something tangible, like, voting in the midterm elections.
Well, let me
Uh,
give you an example of what's next. Watch what happens in New Jersey and Virginia. That's the
yeah,
what's next. Because, and you're the political expert as well here, those are off-year elections. And if Virginia, and the races are tightening, certainly in New Jersey. So with all that's going on, if you look at a sort of a generally liberal state, sort of like New Jersey, and a swing state like Virginia, and should they both go Republican in their gubernatorial elections, well, that tells you that while there might be a lot of anger in the streets, not enough to change the guard at the top of the state.
okay, let's try this. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, is widely mentioned as a presidential candidate for the Democratic nomination in 2028. What can you tell us about the governor's presidential ambitions?
Well, he seems to, and I interviewed the governor just a few weeks ago about a different topic. We talked about anti-Semitism, and we actually recorded it at the Holocaust Museum here in Illinois. But knowing him to the extent I do, I think you'd be fooling yourself to think he doesn't have those national ambitions. I will say there's another local character who might be looking at a presidential run, and that is former mayor and congressman and everything else, Rahm Emanuel. The two of them are friends. And my best guess is that they will at some point have a powwow and sit down and decide which of us is going to go for it. I think I put my money on Pritzker being the one to go for it. He's just doing too many things and getting a lot of national attention, but Rahm is as well. So that I think he's putting his name out there. Now, a recent story last week was he went to Vegas and I guess won over $1 million in playing
Yeah, I
cards for a
saw
day.
that.
But and so while some of the Republicans locally started attacking him and whatever, the bottom line was, again, I look at it as an analyst. That's how we know about it. He reported it on his income tax and he donated it all to charity. So get mad at him for winning $1 million if you want, and talk about the fact that, we're not millionaires, but he is. But it's not exactly like he took the money and went and bought himself a nice gold bracelet. He donated it. So a pretty good move. He's very conscious, I think, that every move he makes, he's being watched. And I think he is one to watch going forward. What are his chances? It's too early to know right now. You have Gavin Newsom and so many other people. Brad, there's going to be a huge pool of people who are going to want that Democratic nomination in 2028. And we have to see how things play out.
Yep. Let's go back to, since you're a lawyer and WGN legal analyst, let's go back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has a case before it, which I guess they've heard oral arguments on, that would essentially disrupt the Voting Rights Act, and in particular, if the court hears the case and rules on it against the civil rights movement, we could have massive redistricting in the South and the West that could help Republicans hang on to the Senate. And essentially, could you tell us about that court case, Paul?
Well, essentially, and remember, the Supreme Court has dealt with, over the last period of years, some of these redistricting cases anyway, and they have slowly but surely been gutting the redistricting efforts. People have to remember that where this comes from, you got to go back to the 60s and the 70s, and a lot of these rules were put into place because districts were being drawn in a way to basically keep African Americans from having any kind of representation. So the court steps in decades ago in many southern states and said, look, this has to be more fair. So what happened lately is a group of essentially Caucasians, white people, who said, well, wait a minute, now that you're making these efforts, we're being discriminated against, depending on where we live. So we live in an area where there are many, minorities living, but our voices aren't being heard. I don't know what the court's going to do, but you start with the premise, which is if the Supreme Court takes a case, the odds are they're taking it to change something. Why take a case if you have no problem with what's going on? You just don't take the case. So they can affirm things, but it looks like when they take this case, and given their trajectory, it looks as though their desire may be to further gut the fair redistricting efforts. And then your point is taken fairly, which we already see. Texas just created 5 more Republican districts. Illinois playing with whether they'll create one. Although while some say they're looking at it, some say, and I talked to the Speaker of our House last week. He said, I haven't seen any maps. So we'll see how it all plays out. California stepping in. And it gets sort of messy, but there's no question if the court wipes out the efforts in that area, yes, you're looking at what will clearly be nationally a more strongly Republican map.
Paul, thank you very much for joining us today. It's always great to have you on.
Good to see you, Brad.
And remember that Paul is the co-anchor of the Political Report Sunday mornings on WGN-TV in Chicago. It airs at 9 a.m. Central Time, and you can watch it live online, sort of the same way you can watch Deadline DC live. We're going to take a break now. Our guest in the second half hour will be Tara Devlin, the host of the TARABUSTER podcast. She comes to us from New York City. We're going to discuss the No Kings protest that occurred in the Big Apple. We'll be back with more of Deadline D right after this message.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Brad. Take care.
He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WAC, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WAC, Medicare for All is back in the spotlight. With new bills recently introduced in Congress, what makes these proposals different from earlier versions? And why are some advocates feeling hopeful even in the current political climate? What would a truly public universal healthcare system look like? And how could it help curb the soaring costs, corporate greed, and bureaucracy plaguing our current system? To unpack this, we spoke with Rachel Madley, Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Health and Democracy, a former health policy advisor to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, lead sponsor of the House Medicare for All bill. Rachel helped shape and reintroduce the landmark legislation in 2023.
Investors on Wall Street see health insurance companies as an investment opportunity to build their wealth. We have to make healthcare a bad investment opportunity. No one
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is the hostess with the mostest, Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast.
Thank you.
She's here today to discuss the No Kings protest, the New York City mayoral race, and an article she's in the middle of writing about oligarchy con job. We'll ask her to talk about that. Let's start. We're going to play this clip now from CBS on the No Kings protest.
Today, organizers say at least 7 million Americans took to the streets protesting what many called an abuse of power by President Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson called it, quote, the Hate America rally. Here in New York City, police say 100,000 people turned out at multiple marches. They report no arrests. There were more than 2,600 events from coast to coast. They are all part of the No Kings movement, which accuses the president of behaving more like a monarch than an elected official. CBS's Elise Preston in Los Angeles leads us off tonight. Elise.
Jerika, thousands have turned up here in downtown Los Angeles to express their fear and frustration with the administration. Their message, no monarchs in America.
I want to be able to tell my future children that I was here, that I stood on the right side of history.
The nationwide rallies are in response to what organizers call an abuse of power by President Trump, including his administration's crackdown on immigration and its threat to send the National Guard into cities, including Chicago and Portland.
The message is no kings. The message is the Constitution of the United States is a wonderful document that matters.
Republicans said the protests were nothing more than hate America rallies.
I'm Torian Small in Washington, D.C. Before leaving the Hill this week, House Speaker Mike Johnson framed this rally as a hate America event. Attendees disagreed.
We love America. We hate what they're trying to do to America.
Today's rally is taking place in big cities and small towns in every state.
I'm Allie Bauman in Morristown, New Jersey. Thousands attended today's rally 16 miles away from the president's New Jersey golf course. This county has deep roots in the nation's founding, known as the military capital of the American Revolution.
Our forefathers fought off kings and said no kings for the first time. So it is full circle.
Judy Kelly is one of the local organizers.
To defend democracy on this land, it does mean a lot to all of us who are working on it.
In Frisco, Texas, the protest was small but vocal.
I believe in democracy. I fought for democracy and sacrificed. And the things that are being done right now in this government are totally ridiculous.
In Europe, protesters were also small in numbers, but passionate outside the U.S. Embassy in London, in Paris and Berlin.
Being here in Germany, especially considering the history that's here, we have a unique perspective to look and say, that's not okay.
Ahead of today's protest, the governors of Virginia and Texas brought in the National Guard to handle any potential unrest in their state. Jerika, those protests have been largely peaceful. Same scene here in Los Angeles.
That was our clip from CBS News about the No Kings protest. Our guest today is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. Tara, your observations on the No Kings protest?
Well, it's great, and I'm glad that we actually more people came out this time, about 2 million more, and we're reaching that tipping point in social science that say you need at least 3.5% of the population to really to really know that your movement has legs and impact. So, and yeah, now we have to organize and get these people out to the polls. But, the fact that, and engage too. The other thing, I think that we need to support the independent liberal media, like what we're doing here, because, it's great. I'm glad the legacy media covered it. But the problem is what really irritates me when she's saying what critics call an overreach by Trump. What critics call? How about anybody with eyes? Anyone with a basic knowledge of the Constitution call the fact that Trump wants to be a king. Not only he thinks he's a king, he says it all the time. He's the one that said, all hail the king. He tweeted out a picture of himself in a crown and all this other stuff. It's not normal, of course, but they normalize it all the time. What critics say, sending the National Guard, activating other states' National Guard and sending them to other states is absolutely an aberration. It's appalling. It's an abomination. And no American should stand for it. It really aggravates me. In fact, with what's his name, Greg Abbott from Texas, saying he had to send his National Guard to Chicago because Pritzker isn't following the Constitution. Who are these these poorly run red state governors to do this to their fellow Americans? This is what it is. They're really waging war against the American people, not just blue states. They're waging war against democracy.
When I first heard that Texas had sent National Guards troops to Chicago, Illinois, first thing I think of, well, this gives the South the chance to refight the Civil War.
Yeah, this is what everyone who ever fought, bled, and died for this country is rolling over in their graves, because the Republicans are waging war against democracy. And even the fact that they call it a Hate America rally, they should be ashamed of themselves. It goes to show you that they have nothing to offer the American people. It is a con job. The entire Republican Party is a con job. And like you said, I'm writing an article about this for the Political Voices Network. And it's time for the American people to face it. But you won't hear this from the legacy media because they are busy enabling the Republicans and taking them at their word. Taking them, I mean, you don't have to simply report what Mike Johnson says to call it a hate America rally. And in fact, to say that it's all Hamas and Antifa and domestic terrorists populating the No Kings March. First of all, Antifa is not an organization. It is an idea. And the fact that they call it that it's the greatest domestic terrorist threat goes to show us all that the Republican Party is running a scam on the American people. They don't want to face, they don't want to solve America's actual problems that they help create. They want to tear this country apart. If you really had a domestic terrorist problem, we would know about it. We would know about it. They make up this ubiquitous, all-seeing domestic terrorist threat. Everybody's under assault, right? Everybody's under attack all the time from these people. But where are these people? I heard that Kristi Noem took what did they do? They arrested the girlfriend of the founder of Antifa. Okay, right. Where is she? Where's you got Bonnie. Where's Clyde? Right? Nobody knows who the founder is. Where do I send my dues? Where's the organization? Where do I show up for my meetings? Where do I get? I mean, this is what we're talking about. The Republican Party they are the domestic enemies the founders warned us about at this moment right now.
Well, let me ask you this question, Tara. How do they get away with it? There's, clearly
right. Because of the media. That I mean, prove me wrong. If we, we're having a discussion here, but I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misguided. I think it's the media. Since the consolidation of the media, we have half the country that are getting their information from media outlets that literally had to pay the largest fine in American history for lying to their viewers, or they were hit with the largest fine. It was reduced, but and studies show make its viewers less informed than those who watch no news at all. And then you have the right-wing influencers who are being funded by the Kremlin. And these people are enabled too. And these are the people that Kristi Noem has on the roofs of in Portland, looking down on the so-called domestic terrorists who are standing around in frog suits and clown suits and all these other, outfits that make the assault on them look ridiculous. And I'm glad they're doing that, really. So, but it's.
And by the way, since you mentioned Kristi Noem, Christmas came early for her today. The president just gifted her 2 luxury Gulfstream jets for her use.
Really? I mean, it's good to be the king. This is what we're talking about. This guy, they're out of control. Republicans are not, and I've said it for years, that Republicans do not get into government.
Tara, I'm going to have to interrupt you.
Okay.
We're coming up against a break. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC and Tara Devlin from TARABUSTER right after this quick break.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's matching.
Right. Well,
welcome back to
sorry.
Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our special guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. If you're watching us, you can see the big blue TARABUSTER sign on the screen. Let me ask you about this. There's you mentioned, one of the objects of the No Kings protest is to organize and mobilize people for elections, and we have a big election coming up in New York City, where the Democratic candidate Zohan Mamdani is running against former Governor Andrew Cuomo and a Republican Curtis Silva. What does that race look like? A lot of progressives are betting on Mamdani to take the prize in New York City. Will he?
I hope so. I can't wait to vote for him as a New Yorker. I think he's a breath of fresh air. and the way that they attack him. As FDR said, "Judge me by my enemies." When all the big billionaires are funding, the same billionaires who fund Trump are funding Cuomo, and really he should just go away. We're sick of you, Cuomo. He was not exactly, I mean, even when he was the governor, and he wants to be the mayor now, but he lobby, what do you call it? He caucused with the Republicans. He created a body that actually it consisted of Republicans that he would use to block whatever progressive initiatives that the people voted for. This is who we're dealing with. And of course, he was rather handsy, not just, he was hands-on in more ways than one. But I'm just so sick of people like him. I think that the people of New York are too. And I'm glad to see it. But they can't even fight him fairly and squarely on the field of ideas. And this is how you know that they're afraid. But you gotta think though, how much do you need? How much money do you people need? People just want a fair shake in New York. It's a very expensive city. It's hard to find affordable housing. And I mean, you just have to ask yourself, how much do these people want? Well, they want it all. And we're just asking for a seat at the table, a piece of, a fair share of the profit that our labor makes possible in the first place, and not have to live such a hard scrabble existence. That's what it means to be an American now. You don't know where, if you can get health care now again. It's just disgusting. But that's why people are gravitating towards Mondami, and I'm pleased to see it because he's for real.
Quick question before we go back to bringing our radio listeners. Will Mondami be able to organize all that energy of people in New York City who marched in the No Kings protest?
That's the test. I really hope so. I think so. I think that they see Trump for what he is, and now a lot of people who voted for him are getting hurt. And if that's what it takes to wake you up, it's a shame that it has to go there because we tried to warn you.
We have to take another break here to bring back our radio listeners. We'll be back with more Deadline DC and Tara Devlin, the host of TARABUSTER, right after this very quick break. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. If we ever start giving out frequent flyer miles to guests, Tara's going to be right at the top of the list. And we're glad she takes the time to join us occasionally. Tara, let's try this. One of the big news items out of New York City in our nation's capital was former Congressman George Santos was sprung from jail by his buddy Donald Trump after serving only a few months of his sentence.
Disgusting.
Thoughts?
Well, it's once again, the message is if you're a Trump loyalist, you can live a blatant life of crime. Santos is just like Trump, a lifelong con man. And the reason he was kicked out of Congress
They
is
both have convictions for it.
Yeah, they're both con men. A history of, I did a whole thing about him a few times on my show because he lived in Queens. He was notorious for not paying his rent. He, would always just take advantage of whatever progressive policies were out there. Like during the pandemic, he was, of course, living fat on the PPE loans and stuff that he had no business having access to. He's just a grifter, and the reason they kicked him out of Congress was because he was stealing from Republicans too. He was stealing from one guy, I can't remember his name, but shame on this person for allowing his mother to give George Santos her credit card number, but he was stealing from this fellow Republican's mother. This fellow Republican in the House, his mother, he was routinely charging her credit card, and he would not stop. So, and this is just a lifelong grifter. He's a very sick man. He's a sociopath, like like Trump is, clearly, because you don't behave like that otherwise. You don't go out there and say, I'm the volleyball champion, I went to Columbia, I'm an astronaut, I climbed Mount Everest, and everything that he talked about. But it's indicative of the Republican Party. As we remember, they didn't kick him out when they found out, because they have no shame anymore. The Republican Party is all about power, and it's a scam. The whole thing, let's all face it. And I wish the corporate media, maybe one day they'll catch up, just the same way they're catching up with the fact that the Republicans in every Republican chest beats the heart of fascism. Okay, I've been saying that for years. Now, let's get on board with the fact that the Republican Party is a party of grifters. The whole thing is a con to separate people from their money and and destroy democracy, so we don't have the ability to do anything about it. That's what they want to do. And they don't, because they're not very impressive people. Ultimately, they don't have what it takes to actually be those people that they want us to think they are. Like Santos, he would love to be a volleyball star, but that takes too much work. That you have to actually commit to something then, and you have to keep working at it and practicing. But they don't want to do that. Same thing with Trump. They just want the easy route. They want to rig the game, and that's why they get into government. They're not in government for altruism. They're not in government to help people, as we know. I mean, people who slap each other on the back for stripping Americans of health care, they should be ashamed of themselves. But no, they don't care. They want more money and power. So everything that they've been telling us for years, I've been screaming about it, you've been screaming about it, that trickle down is baloney. Their tax cuts don't pay for themselves. The Republican Party is bad for business. Ultimately, it's the truth. Everything that they run on is a scam. The whole thing. Deregulation leads to explosive business growth. It's just, no, it doesn't. Regulations are written in blood. How many lead paint chips do you have to eat till you figure that out? People died because of these regulations. It's not like people are like, hey, let's regulate this. People learn hard lessons, and then here comes regulation, and they think, well, they it's so much cheaper to just pour your corporate poison into the environment. If you can make an extra buck. They don't have a community spirit. They don't like this country. I mean, really, they love government. They just don't like democracy. They love a big government that has its boot on your neck. So, that it's time to just get out there and tell people this. Enough with the enabling. Let's not take the Republicans at their word, corporate media, when they say, oh, the big beautiful bill is going to be great for everybody. Or when Mike Johnson says he's a real Article 1 guy, when he's just completely
Excuse me for
abdicated.
chuckling, Tara.
He's abdicated his role as a co-equal branch of government. So has the Supreme Court. It's just a disgusting disgrace that proves that they have never had an interest in democracy. It's pesky, it's annoying, and what they're doing is dragging us back to the system that the founders fought a revolution to overthrow. So nothing more American, just like what they say, everything's a confession or a projection. To say it, that what we witnessed yesterday was a Hate America rally, shame on them. It's just another example that they can't tell the truth if they tried. They can't meet us fairly and squarely.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, Tara. A development I find very troubling is the new editor-in-chief of CBS News is a Trump crony.
Yep.
Now, CBS News, I remember the Dan Rather breaking the Watergate conspiracy, Edward R. Murrow taking on fascist McCarthyism.
That's right.
And, Fox News is Fox News, but when CBS has someone like her as an editor-in-chief, it makes me really worry. So
Yes.
my question to you is, how do we break the hold of the corporate media? I mean, let's face it, let's be realistic here, Tara. If you took the TARABUSTER viewers and
Yes.
added them on top of the Deadline DC viewers, CBS has more influence than the
I
two of them
know,
put
it's
together.
sad. I know.
So how do you, I'm sorry,
No, I hear
sorry to
you.
break
That's
that to
why
you.
I always say we'll know this country's on the right track when people like that, when CBS is saying, please become a patron. And, we just are rolling on with telling the truth to the American people. Yeah, it's a disgrace, but that's why we're in this boat. Because of the deregulation of the media, because of the consolidation of the media, and how do we break through? We're breaking through. We're doing what we can now, but I really do wish the Democratic Party would do what the Republican Party did. See, they were smart years ago, the Republican Party, because they have nothing else in reality to boast about. So they would fund people like and elevate people like, for example, Diamond and Silk. I always point to them because as soon as they picked her up and they put them, not her, them, the two of them. Now there's only one because she, took her own advice about COVID. But anyway, rest in peace, lady. But they picked her up and they picked them up and put them on Fox News. And this is what they would do. So they understood that wherever the American people went, they wanted them to meet their message. And that's why, Putin funds right-wing influencers. That's why the Republican Party, the big wigs in the Republican Party, will go on these small podcasts and give these right-wing influencers a bigger platform that way. They don't do that in the Democratic Party, and it's really frustrating. Maybe they're going to learn now, but I think it's because of people like, Schumer and the old guard. They're still standing in the way. Like Schumer, shame on them. They still have, and Gillibrand, who are my senators, still haven't endorsed Mondami. They don't see, I guess a need to do it. I don't know why. They should be, and they're also funding some other some near 80-year-old. I'm trying to remember where it is now, but
Maine,
yeah,
Janet Mills.
right. Instead of the progressive challenger, he's endorsing this 80-year-old again. Yeah, it's time, for a sea change in the Democratic Party, in my opinion. But yeah, we have to get the message. That's why we're in this boat. You see, that's why people in these poorly run red states, where people like Mitch McConnell and the rest do nothing for the people they pretend to represent. In fact, they make their lives
Tara,
measurably worse.
unfortunately, that's all the time we have
What?
on this
No.
occasion. I'm sure you will be back. I want to thank Tara Devlin, the host of TARABUSTER podcast.
Thank you.
I want to thank Paul Lisnek, the political and legal analyst for WGN-TV in Chicago. And a special thanks to my intrepid executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, who makes sure the show runs on time.
Cheers.
And the train starts on time. Miss the very best in aggressive progressive online TV at your own peril. We'll be back.